Thank you for everybody who's stuck around. I know we're over by a little bit of time, so I will go as quickly as possible, but wanted to give you updates on our projects. Lights, cameras, action, using wildlife cameras to assess how artificial light at night influences mammalian communities and cities. So this project was a collaborative effort amongst the students here, amongst the Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium, amongst Metro Parks Tacoma, essentially under the new broad aegis of the Grit City Carnivore Project. So we are now looking through data to try and understand one kind of quintessential essence of a city, right? When you look at a city at night, you notice something very, very obvious. It's bright. It's really, really bright. And if you were to go to, say, Eatonville or Mount Rainier, it's not nearly as bright as what it is as downtown Tacoma, right? And all of these lights influence us, not just us, but also wildlife. The way in which we interact with our environment and in our environment influences the way in which these animals do so as well. And there are several biological consequences as a function of artificial light at night. So just because it's bright and potentially annoying is not enough. It actually has several biological consequences all the way from the individual to community level, where light in and of itself, where it's being produced anthropogenically, is throwing off circadian rhythms, is throwing off hormonal imbalances that influence the way in which organisms experience their environment. So this is not restricted to people where, say, just throwing off cortisol, for instance, can increase weight gain, and that happens with more light at night. Hence the reason that if you sleep somewhere and that place that you sleep in has a night light, turn it off. Because it can mess up your melatonin, mess up your cortisol, mess up the way in which your body regulates endocrine function. So does that happen with mammals? The first thing that we figured was, all right, well, maybe the mammals that we see inside of cities are influenced by how bright an area is within a city. So we wrap this up into the Grit City Carnivore Project, where we're putting up remotely triggered cameras that get images of wildlife all across the city, starting from as far north as Point Defiance Park and going all the way down through Eatonville at Northwest Trek, and then also through JBLM. So several of the students that were part of the project set up about 39 of our 52 sites for cameras. And of course, we have a nice little setup. So on this, what you're seeing right now is this is a camera to your, left, to my right, and then there is a light meter. So every time an animal, and this also includes humans, walks past the camera, we get a photo of that animal. So we can tell whether or not that animal was there. And then the light meter tells us the amount of luminance in a site. So we get some lovely photos like this. This particular coyote was snagged at the Tacoma Nature Center. So that's right off of South 19th and Proctor. And we get, also other little furry things like opossums. So there's the opossum over to screen right. And this is all throughout the city. So this is Charlotte's Blueberry Park. I could certainly show you a bunch of other photos, and if anybody's ever interested, we have tons of interesting wildlife photos, but of course, interesting human photos, because it's urban ecology, so you get all of the things. But here are several of the students that we hired on to work with the project. We also wrapped in the Grit City Carnivore Project into a class as well. So we built some real camaraderie with these students, and every time they got a chance to tag photos, it was like opening up presents on Christmas morning, because you didn't necessarily know what you were going to get. But the great thing about bringing in students from UW is that they had their own ideas of like, oh, well, what if the number of mammalian carnivores is influenced by noise? So one of the new things that we added on that we didn't even anticipate was measuring ambient noise, which right here, one of my students is holding a noise meter to get decibel levels. So it turns out from some of our preliminary findings, the noisier it is, the less coyotes you get, the less deer you get, but you still get tons of raccoons. Raccoons just don't care. And we also wrapped this in, again, I said that this was a collaborative effort between UW and Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium. So this is a picture taken at the Zoo Society luncheon that just happened recently to kind of drum up support from the community, but also donorship and education throughout many of the schools that are throughout Pierce County. So this particular luncheon helped to connect with school teachers, K through 12 and undergrad, in order to help them see wildlife in their cities, and also talk about what it looks like to put a camera up on their property and say like, hey, I thought I saw a coyote, but I'm not exactly sure. And we're like, all right, well, we got cameras in the lab, let's make it happen. So with all of that, I would like to thank you all all for coming. For sure, if you're interested in seeing more photos about what wildlife we have in our own backyards, I'd be happy to show you. And I will hand it off to Kara. Thank you.